Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, our main goal is going to be to refactor our comics page in order to use Bootstrap cards instead of these custom cards that we made. So we made these little customized little cards with the rounded borders and the description and all this stuff. We want to use Bootstrap's built-in ones instead. This will have a lot of benefits. One of the major ones is that it'll make our application use more Bootstrap and less of our custom stuff. And if we're going to use Bootstrap, or if you're going to use a framework, you need to kind of go all in with it. You don't want to mix in your custom stuff unless you absolutely have to. You want to use the stuff that it gives you, that Bootstrap gives you, whenever possible, because it will act a lot better. It'll be a lot less complex, and you'll also have a lot less bugs, especially when you start to get to responsive stuff. So right now you can see if we make this really small, this is not a good user design because we have our custom CSS and it's just making it smaller, and each of these cards takes up 30% of the page. This is going to look bad on a phone. But if we use Bootstrap cards, it'll automatically make them look better, and we'll show you how that works in the end. So let's go ahead and look at our application. Step one is going to be to pull up our comics.ejs file and do a little bit of, we'll call it refactor, but really it's going to be a lot of gutting. So step number one is we're going to get rid of this label entirely because we know it's the comics page. It's pretty obvious that it's the comics page, and because we got rid of that in our custom CSS, we can get rid of page title because that's the only place that it's being used. So let's save both of those, refresh, and already that goes away. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we're actually going to get rid of this comics container div because we're not going to use that anymore. Instead, we're going to use a Bootstrap row div. Now, let's look at Bootstrap docs, and it's going to be under layout. Now, containers, that's that container div that we already talked about, div class equals container, which has responsive breakpoints. Let's find the row. I'm not worried about z-index. Maybe it's in the grid. Yeah, here it is. It's in the grid. So the way that the grid works is that you have a row div, and inside of there you can put column divs. So for example, this one right here has a row div, and inside it has 3 columns, and Bootstrap automatically divides the size of that row, the horizontal space, equally between those 3 columns. You can do a lot more cool stuff, like you can put numbers. Let's see, for example, 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and then 1, 2, and 3. So if you put only 2 things in there, Bootstrap automatically equally divides it. But if you want them to not be equally divided, you use numbers. Like, for example, this here has column 6, which will use half the space, because the way Bootstrap works is the columns there's 12 total columns running down a row. So you can divide it by any number of 12. You can do 6, you can do 4, 5, whatever. Like right here, they have an example of using 5. And you can see that it's wider, but it's not as wide as the 6. So you can do all that. We're not going to do that on our cards page, but that's what you can do. But underlying this is that you have a container, which we have, and then you have a row. A row is exactly what it sounds like. It's a horizontal alignment thing. So in here, instead of using a what did we call it? Card container, we're using row. So again, over in here, we can get rid of comics container entirely. So we're using row. Let's save both of those and refresh and see what it does. You can see it looks pretty much the same. It got rid of some extra stuff, but it looks pretty much the same because that's what row does. As I mentioned, we're going to stop using these custom cards that we made in our CSS, and we're going to use Bootstrap cards. Let's go over here into Components and Card. And there's a ton of customization that you can do with cards. But basically what you need to do is you add the class of card, which we've already done. And then inside of there, if you're going to have an image, you need to say card image top or card image wherever you're going to put it. So in ours, I think it just says card image. Yeah, card image top. Let's save that, look at it, and it should be pretty much the same. You'll see that some of the border radius is different because we customized our border radius, and we can still do that, and I'm going to, but I just wanted you to see it. So now we've got card image top, but we also want to have our custom card image, because I like having that more border radius. I like having the border radius, and I also like keeping the images the correct size, like a equal size. Even if it cuts them off some, I'm fine with that because I'm more interested in the overall layout of the page being equal, as opposed to making sure that all of the image gets put in there. Because if we go back, if we get rid of that, undo that, you'll see that these cards are different size. See, the image gets pushed down, those things. Now the overall card is the same size. But if you have an image that's a really wonky size, it can really jack up your entire page layout because it accepts that and it sets the height of that image to whatever the input image is. So we don't want that, or at least I don't want that in mine. So I'm going to redo that and just leave our card image like that for now. I also want this image to be a link. Whenever a user clicks on that image, I want it to take them to more details about that particular comic, so Watchmen or Batman or whatever. If they click on that image, I want it to take them to that comic's page. So I'm going to wrap this image in an A tag. Right now, we haven't implemented a database, so we don't have the ability to actually take them to that yet. But, wow, that added a lot of extra space. But we can still kind of fake that. So let's refresh. And now these are links. If I click on it, you'll see that it actually took me to the link. But that's fine. And also the last thing we need to do is here card. You'll see that for this part down here, the content, it needs to be card text. We have it as card description. So we're going to update that, see if it still works. It does. It's got some spacing issues, but that's what we want. And then over here in our styles, we no longer need card description. Instead, we want that to be card text. And what we're doing here is we're overriding the default font, the default line height, and the default margin. So if we update that, it'll go back to what it was. One thing to note about that is that the margin here on the bottom of these is still 0, even though we are setting it to 1.5 REM. I can set this to 100.5 REM and refresh, and it's still nothing. The reason for that, and let's inspect it so we can see. Scroll down, click on that. That's that P right there, I think. Is that the P? Yeah, card text. The reason for that is due to specificity. Right now we have .card text last child is set margin bottom of 0. So we can't, so this is overriding our margin bottom that we're setting right here. We're setting it on the P, it's setting it on the card text last child. That's just more specific. There are a few ways we could get around this. The first one is that we could do important, and this is kind of the thing that a lot of new web developers do. And let's refresh, and now we have it there. The problem with this is that by setting it to important, you create a lot of problems for yourself and other developers in the future. You should never use this important unless there's no other way to do what you want. Okay? Don't use the important if at all possible. The other way, and the right way to do this, is we're going to use Bootstrap's spacing utilities. So, spacing. Basically how this works is you just add more classes, because again, Bootstrap is all about its classes. You can add classes from 0.25 to 3 REM built in without having to add any custom CSS. The way that it works is you just add a class that says M or P, depending on if you want margin or padding, and then where you want it. Top, bottom, left, right, X is the X-axis, so top and bottom, Y is the Y-axis, left and right, or if you just put M or P with nothing after it, it'll do it for all of them. And then here's your sizes, 1 through 5, or auto. So this is what the class looks like. MT-0 will set margin top to 0. ML-1 will set margin left to 1. And don't worry about this spacer times 0.25 type thing. That's a Sass issue. Just try it and see what it does. So because we want margin at the bottom, let's try MB-2, save and refresh. And I added some. That's not quite enough, I don't think, so let's try 3. There we go, I like that. Margin bottom 3. What that allows us to do is inside our styles, get rid of margin bottom. And honestly, what we're going to end up doing is going through and removing all of the margin and padding custom CSS from our custom CSS and just using the built-in Bootstrap spacing utilities. Again, the reason for this is because we want to get rid of as much custom CSS as we can so that it doesn't cause any bugs. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that entirely and see what it looks like. See, now it's got that no margin on the left and right, but we do want that. So let's just come in here and add margin X, because remember X is the X-axis left and right, 3. And see if that does like we like. Refresh. That might be a little, no, that's fine. It's fine. Next thing I want to do is to add some more margin at the top here because this looks a little cramped up against the nav bar. So to do that, all I have to do is MT for top, and let's try 2 and see if that works. Looks like it's a little bit better, maybe 3. I think that's probably too much, so let's go with 2. Why are we not refreshing? There we go. Margin top 2. Yeah, I like that. That looks good. Next, let's look at other margins. Card title. We have a margin of 0.5. We don't want any margins in our custom CSS if we can help it. So let's refresh and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's a little bit too smashed. So in the card title, we want a margin top of, that might be 2. That looks close. It looks a little bit off balance with the bottom, so maybe a 3. There we go, I like that. That's kind of centered between the image and the p tag in the description, so yeah, that'll work. Now let's just look at our next styles. We're looking for margin, or there we go, margin 0 auto for the card image. I think that's already done by the simple card, so we shouldn't have to do any changes. Yeah, that didn't change anything, it was already set. Padding on the card is set to 0. I think, again, that's already done. Yeah, that's already done. Margin on the card is not, though. So let's save that and refresh, and there, see how they're smashed against each other? So we are going to add some margin to them. So let's see, card, and then we're going to do margin X, because we want on either side. Let's try 2, see if that works. Maybe not quite enough, so maybe 3. Yeah, that'll work. That's good. I like that. Let's see what else we can do. Have we gotten rid of all of our margins and our padding? Yep, it looks like it. And one more thing, it looks like when we got rid of that, it also decreased the space here. So we need to add a little bit more margin on top of those cards. We could either add it to the card or we could add it to the row. I think I'm going to add it. Actually, I'm not sure. Let's add another one so we can see where this next row is going to populate. Let's see what we want. Oh my, yes, we definitely want it added to the cards themselves. So for the card, margin X is 3. Let's do margin top of 3 as well and see if that will do what we want. It does. There's probably not enough space there, so what if we just, instead of margin top, do margin Y of 3? Yeah, and that'll put a good space in there. And what's cool is that since we have margin X of 3 and margin Y of 3, we can just do margin of 3, and it will be the exact same with one less CSS class, making our classes even cleaner. So I am happy with this layout. You should feel free to play around and make it your own. Add Bootstrap classes, add margins, add padding, add whatever it is you feel that you need to make your website look like you want. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I am not a graphic designer, so don't just do what I do just because. Make it your own. So a lot of you are better at graphic design than I am. Heck, just about all of you are better at graphic design than I am. So make it prettier than mine. In this video, we refactored our comics.ejs or whatever your index.ejx page is to use Bootstrap cards instead of the custom cards that we had made. We updated the class from card container or comics container, whatever it was, to a row, which is a built-in Bootstrap utility for layout. And inside of there, we are placing our cards. We use the Bootstrap card class, which we actually already had on there. We updated some of the classes on our elements inside of the Bootstrap card. We added an A tag to the image to take the user to show more information about the comic. And then we started adding a lot of the Bootstrap spacing utilities, talking about margin bottom, margin X, margin top, padding, all that stuff. This is the last video for now on Bootstrap and on layout. In the next video, we're going to finally get into databases. We're going to start learning about MongoDB and how awesome it's going to make our website. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.